1853 time. The world divides. A war begins.
What happens when courage collides with catastrophe? Imagine hundreds of soldiers galloping straight into enemy fire, not because they wanted to, but because they were ordered to. Today, we're rediving into one of the most tragic yet heroic moments in military history: the charge of the Light Brigade. You'll learn how a single miscommunication led to a suicidal attack, and how that moment was forever etched into history through poetry, honor, and heartbreak. It was October 25, 1854. The Crimean War was raging between the British Empire, France, and the Ottoman Empire on one side and Russia on the other. In a dusty valley called Balaclava, a British cavalry unit known as the Light Brigade received an order. They were told to charge. But what they didn't know was that they were charging straight into a death trap. This is not just a story about war. It's about loyalty, bravery, and the devastating cost of human error. And thanks to a poem written by Alfred Lord Tennyson, this moment became immortal. Let's rewind the clock and uncover the full story. The Crimean War wasn't just about territory. It was about power, politics, and pride. Russia wanted to expand its influence over the Ottoman Empire. Britain and France didn't like that idea, so they teamed up with the Ottomans to push back. The war was brutal. It was fought in freezing conditions, with poor supplies and outdated tactics. And in the middle of this chaos came the Battle of Balaclava. The Light Brigade was a cavalry unit, fast, agile, and lightly armed. They weren't meant for head-on assaults. Their job was to chase down retreating enemies or scout ahead. Think of them like the sports cars of the battlefield, quick, but not built for heavy combat. Led by Lord Cardigan, the Light Brigade was made up of around 600 men. They were proud, disciplined, and ready to follow orders, no matter the cost. Here's where things went horribly wrong. British commanders saw Russian forces trying to take some abandoned guns. They wanted to stop them, so they sent an order to the Light Brigade: prevent the enemy from carrying away the guns. But the message was vague. It didn't say which guns, and the officer who delivered the order pointed toward the wrong location, where Russian artillery was heavily fortified. Lord Cardigan, following the order to the letter, led his men straight into the valley. A valley surrounded on three sides by Russian cannons. It was a mistake, a deadly one. Picture this: 600 men on horseback, swords drawn, charging into a storm of bullets and cannon fire. They knew it was suicide, but they didn't turn back. Witnesses described the scene as both horrifying and awe-inspiring. Russian soldiers were stunned by the bravery. Even they couldn't believe what they were seeing. The Light Brigade rode through the valley, taking heavy fire from both sides. Men and horses fell. Smoke filled the air, but they kept going. They reached the Russian lines, fought fiercely, and then had to retreat. Out of the 600 who charged, nearly half were killed, wounded, or captured. You might be wondering, why didn't they question the order? Because, in the military, especially back then, obedience was everything. Soldiers were trained to follow commands without hesitation. To question an order was to risk chaos, dishonor, or even court-martial. And for the Light Brigade, honor mattered more than survival. Just weeks after the charge, British poet Alfred Lord Tennyson wrote a poem that would echo through history. It was called The Charge of the Light Brigade. Here's a famous line you might recognize: "There's not to reason why, there's but to do and die." Tennyson wasn't just writing about war. He was writing about duty. about the kind of courage that defies logic. His poem turned a military disaster into a symbol of heroism. It was printed in newspapers, recited in schools, and remembered for generations. The charge of the Light Brigade became a turning point, not in the war, but in how people viewed soldiers. It showed that even in the face of failure, bravery could shine through. It sparked debates about leadership, communication, and the cost of blind obedience. And it reminded the world that sometimes the most powerful stories come from the darkest moments. Today, the Valley of Balaclava is quiet, but the echoes of that charge still ring. So what can we learn from the charge of the Light Brigade? That courage isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's about showing up, knowing the odds, and riding forward anyway. That words, like Tennyson's poem, can preserve history in ways facts alone cannot, and that behind every battle are real people, real choices, and real consequences. The Light Brigade didn't win that day, but they earned something far more lasting, a place in history, in poetry, and in the hearts of those who value honor above all. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, share it. Let's keep the memory of those brave riders alive.